Well, we have to do the newspapers. Israel is on stream. Amavi is also right in the studio. Good morning to the two of you.
Hi there. Good morning. Hi, Izzy.
Lee, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good too.
You look really bright.
Yeah, because today I'm outside.
You look Monday, actually.
How was your weekend?
It was good, quiet and restful.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I love that. When you say quiet and restful, it means you went to the beach.
Hey.
Did you observe social distancing?
Who goes to the beach these days, huh?
I stayed at home. Yeah.
Well, you'll be doing the Times and then which one?
And the Finder.
Okay, and the Finder. Okay. So, Mamavi, you start for us.
So I've got the Daily Graphic newspaper, the Daily Dispatch, and the Daily Statesman newspaper. I want to jump into the Daily Graphic. So straight up, let's check what's on the front page of the paper today, May 18, 2020. Stigmatization, frightening danger. Ghana Health Service commits to ending obstacle. There's a picture of Dr. Da Costa Abuaji, Director of Health Promotion Division at the Ghana Health Service, along with the story. Access Bank supports less privileged Ghana to have beneficiary ownership register by October. COVID-19 frontline workers appreciated on International Day of Family. Unipass makes progress according to operators. And then in the center spread, so that's how the front page of the paper looks like. It's on your screens now. In the center spread, there's a special feature. Old Fadama demolitions, stubborn slum dwellers or wobbly city authorities with a question mark. It will be good to read. I can imagine, I haven't fully read this, but I can imagine it's just the same old thing. You know, we do it, we allow people to come back, and then we make nothing of it, really. On the back page of the Daily Graphic, Sakumono ICGC organizes blood donation exercise. Instant punishment for nose mask violators in Ashanti region. It's raising lots of questions and commentary as well. People who fail to comply with the directive to wear nose mask in the Ashanti region will be made to undertake instant community service as punishment. The Ashanti Regional Security Council last weekend instructed the police in the region to enforce the directive on the wearing of nose mask, especially on those accessing public areas. Well, we will talk about the question marks to this kind of directive. But let's do the Daily Dispatch, front page of the Dispatch, how the 2020 elections could be held without much difficulty. Turnouts could be lower than 69.3%. According to the Dispatch's analysis. Is NIA helping NPP to rig 2020 elections? NIA answers NDC. Akufo-Addo's promise, 44-year-old Cath maternity ward will be done in 3 years. The last paper for me is the Daily Statesman. Front page, ECNIA exposed more lies of NDC. Abronya DC says the Akufo-Addo projects are real, not ghost projects. 155 million euro ready for Cath maternity block. Akufo-Addo reactivates construction of 44-year-old abandoned health facility. All right, they've got some sports on the back page. Gordon Atram explains why he wasn't successful at Dutch Giants PSV. And then Chelsea set to boost Arsenal's chances of signing Thomas Partey due to, is it Janik swap? Well, those of you who follow the sports will understand. That's it for me for the Daily Statesman.
I've been following the sports, but Charlie, that's one. Well, I know Israel is an Arsenal fan. Israel, aren't you an Arsenal fan?
No, that would be news.
Chelsea? I think you're my brother. You've always behaved as if you don't know me. I think, Israel, please go on with the newspaper. Just read, read through the headlines and then we'll...
I'm going with the Finder. So on the front page, you have abandoned for 44 years. President Akufo-Addo moves to complete 750-bed building for Konfanochi Teaching Hospital. And BOG to bridge budget financing gap with 10 billion cedis, and successful simulation at Tema Port paves way for ICOM's takeoff. And Ghana records $936.4 million trade surplus. Also on the Finder and on page 5, 3 died from COVID-19 without any underlying health condition, and 13 new COVID-19 cases in northern region spark fear. Benchmark value policy has not changed GRA. And then no voluntary testing for COVID-19 now, Dr. Sarkodie. And one other story, no new taxes on power consumption, GRA. I think we should come to that subsequently. It's an interesting story. And then we move to the Ghanaian Times. COVID-19 vaccine must be freely available to all, President Akufo-Addo advocates. Also on the front page of the Ghanaian Times, Ghana's COVID-19 recovery rises to 1,754. The case count stand at 5,735. And people have been asking questions about Ghana's recovery rate. Seems we have had a spike in recent times. Some people are questioning, others are also saying, why are you questioning? And we'll come to that later. 2 suspected armed robbers gunned down, another arrested. Dr. Chambers calls for concerted efforts to combat COVID-19. And then we go to the back page of the Ghanaian Times. Road users advised to obey directives at Tema Motorway. And Tamale COVID-19 Center appeals for PPE. So those are the front pages I have.
All right, so let me go through the 3 papers I have quickly. I have the Daily Guide, has on the front page, Obinim facing arrest. Obinim facing arrest. He has his picture well attached. And then we also do have NDC Mosque. We're talking the Daily Guide here. NDC Mosque COVID-19 recoveries. It has an attached picture of Joyce Bawa Mokhtari. 1,754 recover from COVID-19. The Electoral Commission exposes NDC. The paper says Muslim leaders bless Supreme Court Judge Justice Tanko. And then we also have on the back page, ex-Kotoko star stranded in Kenya over unpaid bills, and his name, as the paper has indicated, is Jackson. Also, his picture is also on the back page. Allow us to play golf. The president of the Ghana Golf Association, Mike Agri, has appealed passionately to government for the early return or resumption of the sport amid the coronavirus pandemic. I guess he seemed to be arguing that in the practical way the game is played, it's more like they observe social distances on the plains. No punishment for a Hertha celebration, and we know that the Bundesliga took off nicely. I watched the games, even though some of the teams I didn't support, but one of the matches I watched was Dortmund. It was beautiful. Haaland was again at his best as the game resumed. Let's go to the Ghanaian Observer. Has on the front page, stop needless attacks on the Electoral Commission, Peace Council. Akufo-Addo revives construction of 44-year-old Cath Maternity Children's Block, and Seth Kwame Boateng on Friday brought us all the updates. It was also live intermittently right here on the channel. A disinfection of airport contract. Aviation Minister sets record straight, and we have all the updates. The recoveries, 1,754 coronavirus, and the current case count of Ghana as we have it. But also on the front page of the Ghanaian Observer is a story which is captioned, the Vice President Baumia surprises his 75-year-old primary teacher and presented him with a tractor. Good one. When your teacher teaches you well, you have to, you know, reward him. That's nature. Let's look at my last paper I'm having. The Bank of Ghana index point to economic contraction, and I would want us to look at this if we can, just in some few minutes if we are able to have the time. The BOJ is also lending 5.5 billion Ghana cedis to government. Stands ready also to lend more, up to 10 billion from its accounts, and Ghana's debt stock has hit 236.1 billion in the first quarter. Right. Lady and gentlemen.
Yes.
Right. What do you want to?
I wanted to talk about the Ashanti Region Police, the action that they are taking to enforce the wearing of nose mask. They say they've done a lot of education in the past weeks, except that, I mean, we want everybody to wear the mask, but we know that we're being regulated by certain instruments. And even though on the face of it, you'd say that they're doing the right thing, but we're still a democracy, so they can't prescribe any punishment, instant punishment, for citizens of Kumasi if they're not wearing the nose mask. We need the president, and I think that if the police think that this is what they need to get everybody wearing the mask and adhering to the rules, then we have to embed it in those regulations to make it law once and for all. But otherwise, they're doing something that is not in our books.
I agree, Mambavi, and you know, last week the health minister at the news conference was talking about the fact that government is contemplating a law like that. But if the law hasn't been drafted and passed yet, I don't know why anybody would want to. Essentially, you're taking the law into your own hands and deciding to do what you want to do. It may be for a good cause, but it is not prescribed by law.
Absolutely.
And I think that Samson had a lot to say on this, Ladi and Yanini, and it's also because we've had precedent or past event of abuse by law enforcement agencies and the personnel that have been well deployed for this period. And it's the reason why in the formative period when we had the lockdown, we ultimately had to see the various security personnel, especially the police and the army, relax their hands on the maintenance of the restrictions and then the lockdown. I think what they need to do is to work within the structure of the various security committees that are located either in the regions, the municipalities, or the district, so that they complement these enforcement that they want to undertake with a lot of public education. Because once the law is not on your side, it becomes an affront to human rights. And ultimately, if you appeal to people, they will see reason other than just going the way they have done so far, which I think is not the best way for them.
Well, it's illegal. That's it.
Yeah.
In plain legal language, yes, it is illegal.
Yeah. All right. I think, Izzy, there was a story. Was it in the Finder you wanted to highlight?
Yes, it's the Finder. So it has to do with no new taxes on power consumption. You know, last week there was this issue that came up that ECG was going to be charging VAT and the rest. The GRA has reacted to that, has put out a statement. And let me just go through it. So the Ghana Revenue Authority says there are no plans to introduce new taxes to be levied on power consumption, especially in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. The statement said the supply of electricity to a dwelling of up to a maximum consumption level specified for block charges of lifeline units is still exempt from VAT, NHIL, and Ghana Education Trust Fund levy. It said the Electricity Company of Ghana already charges VAT, NHIL, and GET Fund levy on the supply of electricity in excess of lifeline units. So it says the statement said the purpose of the said GRA letter was to draw the attention of power producers, in particular, to the VAT mechanisms as it applies to the power sector, and to get the operators to invoice the supply of power to the ECG correctly. So, well, essentially, they're saying this is an internal document. We're not seeking, ECG is supposed to be charging VAT and those taxes already. And that all we're seeking to do is to get them to compute it correctly and pay the appropriate amounts. And it also goes on to talk about some misunderstanding of ECG, or it says ECG over the years has had some challenges claiming input VAT associated with the supply of electricity by power producers, which could have reduced the net tax payable by ECG to GRA. It explained. So that's about it. That's the story. Because certainly people were worried that, are we going to pay VAT on ECG, the electricity we consume, which certainly would have shot up tariffs.
But it's okay, well, I think we still have to go back and clarify a few things. So they're saying, according to what you've read, we already pay VATs
essentially, yeah,
on the provision of electricity.
Yeah, so electricity supply, we're paying already.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this has to do with something between ECG and GRA.
Well, the Member of Parliament who first raised this issue, subsequently with a directive put out, Adams Mutawakkilo, we'll see what he says following this reaction.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I believe that already we have a lot of tax components embedded in the structure of the consumption and what is paid by the consumer. And just recently, about in April, we had the independent power producers as well as the chamber for these power producers, led by Eliklim Nwokpo also, advocating that we needed to make sure that we remove some of these embedded levies and taxes so that electricity and the way it's produced and ultimately distributed to the consumer is also affordable. And I believe that the more something is consumed, it also means that the demand ultimately goes high. And you can rake in a lot of revenue out of it. But of course, there's always the debate out there as to where we need to get taxes from. And it's always been argued by even the Bretton Woods institutions that in Africa, we like the direct taxes. It's very easy. And there's a high component of our population which still remain untaxed. And so it makes it easier for central governments to say that, look, this is what we want to do directly. Those who already are paying taxes should be paying more. I'm hoping that perhaps...
Yeah, and trying to get a lot more people into the tax net is the reason why I am one of those who supports the National Identification Authority and registration, the fact that everybody else we should identify everybody in the country. They should have a national ID. When they have the national ID, it makes it easier for us to identify them and to tax them, or whether we're taxing them or whether we're giving them reliefs, it makes it easier. Otherwise, we don't have any means of determining who should be taxed and who shouldn't be taxed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, NHI.
Any other stories of interest before we do myjoyonline.com?
There's this argument about the recoveries and the rate, etc. And I know that Joyce Bawa Muktari has come in for a lot of bashing over the period. And I was thinking that people wanted to ask realistic questions, or because of where she's coming from, these questions have been put under great scrutiny. But I believe that we need also to come out with a lot of explanations as to why we're likely going to have more recoveries. And I believe that we've done a lot of work right here on the channel. During the lockdown yesterday evening, we saw the Deputy Minister of Health try to explain the reasons why we're likely to have more of these recoveries. But these needed to be forthcoming before anybody assumed and predicted whatever it should be, whether there was any conspiracy at all.
So there's been this issue of whether, sometime last week, Dr. Belu Sarkodie actually said that we're considering a situation where we're going to review the 2 negative tests that we do for recovered people, before we certify people to be fully recovered. And he said that they were considering it. And so once that we see sudden increase in the number of recoveries, then people are wondering, is it the case that we have gone back to just 1 negative test to certify somebody as fully recovered? And that's the question that I think people were asking, and I think was legitimate for people to ask that question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think, the whole political twists was added, particularly because of where she was coming from. And it almost sounded as if, because I've seen the headline in one of the papers this morning saying she was mocking.
Yeah.
But really, a lot of people legitimately asked a lot of questions on that. And people assumed that it meant, oh, so when we record more negative numbers, then it looks like people are rejoicing. It's almost as if we want the numbers to go up, but we don't want the recoveries to go up. But I absolutely also believe that we need to ask legitimate questions. And I think some of the things that have come up in terms of questioning the recoveries, very legitimate. We all need the answers. If we're doing just 1 negative test, we should know. And there's a press briefing, not today, tomorrow, but hopefully we'll get some more answers in the course of today.
Definitely.
So yes, I mean, people are asking legitimate questions. Like I asked this legitimate question of, we talked about the 25th of April being the day that we saw the most cases. And so we have 2 graphs out now. The first one came out somewhere, essentially it came out with 200, and it indicated on the 25th of April, we had 270 cases. And then we had another graph that came out last week, which indicated that on the same 25th of April, we had 330 cases. It's a legitimate question to ask, what accounted for the increase in the number of cases on the same day? Because the first graph that was put out was used, or histogram that was put out was used to justify why we had seen the most cases in the day, essentially the peak issue. And so it's a legitimate question to ask.
Well, definitely. And I think that's why we have always said that there needs to be some consistency and preemptiveness in the way the communication is undertaken, so that nobody has any doubt in mind. Because, for example, if you take the last update, the one before the last update, OT region had a number or a figure 26. The last update gave it a figure of 24. You know, and if anybody wanted to play with the minds of the ordinary Ghanaian, this is the opportune time for them to do so. So we need to get our facts right and get our act right as well.
Yeah.
Because if we don't get it right, people begin to doubt the communication and the figures that you put out. So they look at it and they say, why are we getting inconsistencies? And so they're wondering, when each time you come to tell them something, they're wondering, is that going to change? The information you're sharing with me now, is that going to change in a couple of days? Yeah. And that doesn't help what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's do myjoyonline.com. Mama V, we have all the updates right there on our main portal.
So judgment in NCA case not supported by evidence, according to former Deputy Attorney General who was on Newsfile on Saturday. His firm is actually handling some of the officers. Okay, so one of them in this case, that's the director, the former director of the NCA. So he had a lot to say on Newsfile on Saturday, promising to bring more documents. COVID-19 discussion should move from AFP fact check of Ekufuado, Dr. Abuaji urges. Okay, that's the other Abuaji da Costa. Madagascar registers its first COVID-19 death, but has not quit World Health Organization. So there's a certain advocacy being spearheaded by the Madagascan president, asking African leaders to quit the World Health Organization. Okoboy react to AFP report on COVID-19 testing in Africa on Beyond the Lockdown yesterday. Still on the COVID-19 discussion. Okay, so I think it's just a repeated headline. You can play back Beyond the Lockdown as it discussed living with COVID-19 if you missed it yesterday. On obeying COVID-19 safety measures is best gift for health workers, according to Dr. Akorier. Man cuts off son's ear, bends his fingers for stealing 250 Ghana cedis. Obama criticizes Trump administration's virus response, also one of the trending issues.
Very trending. And
okay, so the story about the Madagascar registering its first COVID-19 death, it was something I was working on yesterday. It's actually started with me trying to. There was a story that was making the rounds that Madagascar had quit the WHO, and I found it a bit. So I wanted to actually. I just suspected that it was fake news. So I sought to try and understand what actually is the story. I went in there and I noticed that he had granted an interview, the president of Madagascar had granted an interview to France 24. In that interview, he said a lot of the things that he's being quoted to have said, except he didn't say that they were quitting the WHO and asking other African countries to quit. And so I kept probing and probing and probing. And eventually, I found out that he actually didn't say that.
So he's not advocating for that?
Not at all.
No, and he's also not advocating for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
interesting.
I put out a tweet and I tagged the president, and somebody from Madagascar, an official who didn't want to be named, got in touch with me and said it wasn't true and that the story is fake news. And it was whilst probing that the first Madagascar death on COVID-19 came out.
Right. Well, we'll have to wrap up the segment, but look, in the UK, they're training dogs to be able to sniff out all those who are infected with coronavirus. We'll end the segment with that. But Mama V and Israel, that'll be it for now.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me, Mama V and Roland.
Yeah. All right. Have a super day.
Enjoy the day.
Izzy is back later tonight, of course, with the news. Yes. Stay with us. We've got a lot more to talk about, including this one, Project Restart, with the Bundesliga starting. There's lots of conversation. Apparently, Project Restart, which is the English Premier League, may even move forward further from the dates given earlier. Benedict has got all these details and real football on the pitch.